Some of my colleagues are screaming like they're part of a prison riot, that this is unconstitutional and wrong, and they're very process-driven. In my opinion, they should be substance-driven. By that I mean the central question here is, what were we spending taxpayer money on?
I thought he was going to say they should get back on their meds when he said it should be substance-driven. You know, we don't want them abusing the substances that they obviously ingest, but they should be taking the appropriate number of milligrams. I think. Call me old-fashioned. Senator John Kennedy, of course, always fun. You can hang out with him and laugh all night. Have a good old time. Unlike your average member of the United States Senate, no longer the greatest deliberative body on the planet Earth as it was once known. Much, much less than that today, sorry to say. Well, good Wednesday to you and welcome back. We remain at 888-630-9625. You know what that means? Wednesday, it's hump day. Hump day in the Clinton household, and we all know where that leads every time. Also, here on the Chris Plant Show, it's mailbag day. It's not hump day here, is it, Michael? No, it's not. No, Michael knows that it's not hump day here. At the Chris Plant Show in our radio studio, well, with just the two of us and everything, but and it is mailbag day, and I have right in my hand, right here, mailbag questions to respond to during the course of today's big radio broadcast. A lot going on in the world. President Trump rolled another grenade down the hall yesterday. He was with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. The Democrats in the United States are his most fierce enemy. The enemies of Israel, the enemies of the Jewish people, the enemies of Western civilization, the left in the United States of America, a menace to humanity. And they prove it every stinking day, don't they? Where were they protesting yesterday, Michael? They've been protesting outside of USAID. They're protesting outside the Treasury Department. We have senators threatening violence in the streets. And we know that they make good on that because they've done it hundreds and hundreds of times just in the last few years in acts of insurrection from coast to coast, attacking courthouses and police stations and state capitals and of course, police, killing dozens in their riots. The news media has no awareness of any of this. CNN, the New York Times, they forgot about all that. They probably weren't aware of it at the time. As I like to point out, these so-called news people, they don't actually follow the news. But setting that aside with their threats of violence, the Democrat senators, senior elected officials, Democrat Party, the madness that is the Democrat Party. And why do they hate the Jews, Michael? What is with the Democrats and the Jews? They're out there protesting against Benjamin Netanyahu. You may remember during the Obama-Biden administration, they, the Democrats, them, those people, they sent a team of left-wing radicals over to Israel with buckets full of money, barrels full of money, with, what do they call them, trunks full of money. And the Democrats, Obama and Biden, they sent these left-wing radicals over there to defeat Benjamin Netanyahu in the Israeli election, tampering in foreign elections of our allies because they're filth and they're anti-Semites, too. That's a way of being racist. They love being racist about all things. They are still angry about losing the Civil War in the United States of America. The Democrats are, 1865 and all that. They went ahead and assassinated the first Republican president ever. And let's see, after that, they assassinated two more Republican presidents. And then a communist assassinated John F. Kennedy. And then the Democrats, let's see, they shot at Gerald Ford, and they shot Ronald Reagan, and they shot Donald Trump, and they shot Congressman Steve Scalise, and they carjack everybody in Washington, D.C. At least eventually everybody will be carjacked in Washington, D.C., and every carjacking will be committed by a Democrat voter, sometimes elected Democrats. Oh, speaking of which, Trayon White, speaking of, D.C. City Council, Washington, D.C. City Council, speaking of Jew-hating Democrats, He's the guy who blames the Jews when it snows in Washington, D.C., in the Mid-Atlantic region. And yesterday, every Democrat on the Washington, D.C. City Council voted to expel Trayon White from the D.C. City Council because he is currently on trial. He was arrested by the feds for accepting bribes. He lives in a $5,000 a month apartment down by the baseball field in a very fancy new building. But pay no attention to that. I think that drains his entire annual salary right there, just the rent on his apartment. But never mind that. Trayon White, under indictment, facing very serious charges of bribery and accepting bribes and lots of money and all that usual Democrat Party government corruption and all that. He's on trial, so the Democrats decided they don't believe in due process because don't you know who they are? They're the left. They're like commies. You know, commies are on the left and the Democrats are on the left, and there's not a lot of daylight between them. So the Washington, D.C. City Council voted to expel Trayon White yesterday. He's a black man. Therefore, it was racist. Doesn't matter if the rest of them are black or mostly black. That's not important. But they expelled him without giving him an opportunity to enjoy due process as Americans are supposed to get in the United States of America. Remarkable things. But here's the fun part, buried in the Washington Post, which is just pure trash. He can run for re-election later this year in his own special election when they stand up a special election to replace him before he is convicted of anything. He's obviously guilty as hell, but lay that aside for the moment. And he can run for re-election in the special election to replace him. And he'll run and he'll win in a landslide because this is what the Democrats have done to our sacred constitutional republic in the United States of America. But never mind that. That's not important now. Now, there's a President Trump on the Gaza thing. Hey, let's take over Gaza and we'll rebuild it. They do have 25 miles of Mediterranean beachfront property. I've been saying for years now it could be a tropical, well, it's not tropical, Mediterranean paradise, beachfront paradise. Honestly, I was on with my great friends WLS in Chicago earlier this morning, and we were talking about this. You know, President Trump looks at the Gaza and he thinks, why are these cavemen running the place into the ground? These savages, these reprehensible troglodytes, why do they have this 25-mile stretch of Mediterranean beachfront property that they call the Gaza? And President Trump says, let's go in there and we'll rebuild it. We'll make it into a beachfront paradise. There will be big hotels with the name Trump on top of them along the beach. I don't know if you've been to Israel, but the Gaza is right here. And if you walk up the beach for about 5 minutes from the northern edge of Gaza, you find yourself at a beautiful beachfront hotel resort where lovely women in bikinis are bringing you frozen drinks to your beach chair while your feet are in the watery sands of the Mediterranean, because Israel is civilization and the Gaza is troglodyte land from a prehistoric hell where they kidnap your daughters and you know the rest. Remarkable stuff. But President Trump, and I got to say, this is kind of a fascinating situation for about 10 different reasons, but President Trump raising this issue yesterday at the White House with Benjamin Netanyahu at the White House yesterday. I got caught up in the traffic downtown when I was at my Newsmax job last night because lefties are out in the street everywhere protesting at USAID. They're big, spend more money. We don't know on what, just to spend it. Give another $100 billion to Ukraine because they don't know where the other $100 billion went. So, and the Democrats, and were they burning police cars yesterday, Michael, or are they keeping that in their back pocket? I guess that's in their back pocket so far. Remarkable stuff. And who else, though? They were protesting anti-Netanyahu, anti-Israel, because they hate the Jews, just like Trayon White, no longer on the D.C. City Council. Remarkable stuff. And just like Obama and Biden sending teams to Israel to defeat Benjamin Netanyahu when he was running for re-election as Prime Minister of Israel, the Democrat Party under Barack Hussein Obama sent teams of Democrats there to crush Benjamin Netanyahu. They hate our allies. They love our enemies. You know, they love China and Hamas and who else they love? Oh, the Taliban. They love the Taliban. You see, I was talking about it yesterday, USAID giving hundreds of millions of dollars to the Taliban to irrigate their poppy fields so they can grow more poppies to make more heroin to put out in the global market to kill more people. And the Democrats can't wait to be the financial backers of the Taliban and their heroin trade out of Afghanistan, one of the global centers of heroin and the heroin trade. The Democrat Party is not on the side of civilization anymore. If you're a Democrat, you're welcome to explain why. But somebody should explain why, because nobody ever calls on them to explain why. And we continue to be at 888-630-9625. If you're a Joe Biden, Kamala Harris, Hillary Clinton, Barack Obama voter, why do you hate the Jews so much? What's the matter with you? Remarkable times we're in. So the headline at the corrupt CNN, Trump says Palestinians should leave Gaza permanently and U.S. will, quote, take over, end quote, strip. They're going to take over the strip. By the time Trump is done with it, the only thing known as the Gaza Strip there is going to be a gentleman's club run by Hunter Biden. He's going to have another no-show job, Hunter Biden. So the Gaza Strip, this is kind of amazing. I was being texted about this, naturally, by friends who were sending me. I was on the move and busy doing other things. Like, hey, do you see Trump talking about taking over the Gaza Strip? And my auto response, my immediate response when I saw that was, and I just read like one page on it, I said, I think Trump is going to shame and guilt the Arabs into taking some responsibility for the so-called Palestinian people and the Gaza. The Egyptians, the Saudis are right there, too. You can drive a golf ball into Egypt and practically drive a golf ball into Saudi Arabia from the south end of the Gaza. You can walk there in a couple of days, get Charlton Heston and walk over there. And the Jordanians, since the so-called Palestinians are basically Jordanians, you guys, time to step up and take some responsibility. What President Trump's move will do is expose and reveal the corrupt hypocrisy of the Arabs surrounding Israel as the bloodthirsty gang of medieval ghouls that they are, and the total absence of responsibility on the part of their alleged political leaders, who are all disastrous. But never mind that. The reality is they know that the Palestinians, nobody wants the Palestinians, because they know the Palestinians will come in and start killing people. So the Egyptians don't want them, the Saudis don't want them, the Jordanians don't want them. The Israelis are stuck with them. President Trump is saying, hey, you just had the snot bombed out of you by a culture and a country that's so superior to you that you should be embarrassed every day when you go to sleep in a pool of someone else's blood. And President Trump is saying, I come in there and rebuild that place in no time at all, and you'll have a beautiful place to live because you got 25 miles. Again, Gaza is more than twice the size of Washington, D.C. It has been a two-state. Who did I see? I saw a Republican member of Congress yesterday saying, what we had before October 7th, the massacre, the genocidal attack on Israel, bloodiest attack on Jewish people since the end of World War II and the Holocaust, which was perpetrated by the Socialist Workers' Party of Adolf Hitler. But that's the kind of the Democrat Party today, isn't it? And Bernie Sanders and AOC and all these extremely dim-witted people that run the Democrat Party and are running civilization into the side of a mountain. Just amazing stuff. But I heard him say, we had a two-state solution. And this is what I've been saying for years. Maybe he was listening to my excellent radio broadcast. And the Gaza, more than twice the size of Washington, D.C., 25 miles of Mediterranean beachfront property. And you guys turn it into a death hole. So, look, you can live with yourselves or your Arab neighbors can act like adults, which will never happen. So the Arabs will kill the Trump deal because there is not a leader in the region that is capable of behaving as an adult might behave, and that's tragic and leads to all kinds of bloodshed. And it has for thousands of years, by the way, since they learned to sharpen sticks on rocks. They've been murdering people over there over whatever, That's my rock. Don't look at my rock, and then they murder everybody. It's been going on forever and ever. I don't think there's any saving them, but President Trump, the headline is, Trump says Palestinians should leave Gaza permanently and the U.S. will take over Strip. Trump declares U.S. will take over the Gaza Strip. Another headline. And we'll see about that. In the meantime, the Democrats in Washington are furious, and they're out, including members of the Senate and of the House, saying mentally ill things very loudly into bullhorns because they're all mental cases. Like who we got? Maxine Waters, and we got a whole bunch of these mental cases. Chucky Schumer was out there too, wasn't he? The Lizard King. He used to be Jewish. He gave that up. Pretty amazing stuff. Wah, wah, wah. There won't be anything left. Trump promises total obliteration of Iran if Iran tries to assassinate him again. Again. That came up at the White House yesterday, too. The Democrats are on the side of Iran and Hamas and not Israel and not the United States of America. 888-630-9625. Chris here with a list of things that none of us should trust. The Washington Post, the New York Times, anything on CNN. Here's a list of things that I do trust. The Washington Times. Support real journalism for just $1 a week at washingtontimes.com/Chris. And who's this, what is it, a New Jersey Democrat calling for war in the streets? Keeping in mind the party of slavery gave us the first Civil War. And their rhetoric today is, we better start fortifying Fort Sumter again. All right, let's go to the telephones, Miguel. Let's go to Steve, calling from San Antonio, Texas. Stephen, you're on the Chris Plant Show.
Good morning, Chris. I love
Steve.
your show. I discovered it last summer.
Excellent.
It's great.
Thank you.
Hey, before I make my point, I sent you a T-shirt with Donald Trump's mugshot and Dr. Lazarus from Galaxy Quest on there saying, "By Grandfather's hammer you shall be avenged." I don't know if you ever got it or not, but
do I have that?
Probably get too many things.
When did you mail it?
Around July, I think.
Oh, all right. Then it's definitely here in the collection. You didn't mail it last week or something. Well, listen, I'm running out the clock on you. Thank you very kindly for that.
You're welcome. I think you ought to have an award call it the Hank Johnson Maxine Waters Award that you could give every once in a while to a Democrat like this woman from New Jersey, or, Governor Newsom or somebody from Minnesota or Goldman from New York. Anyway, when they make these asinine comments, I think the Johnson Waters Award would be a wonderful thing to recognize their intelligence.
That is a wonderful idea. Hank Johnson, who was afraid that Guam would flip over like a Frisbee in a swimming pool if we put too many Marines on one side, who fears a world without balloons, Congressman Hank Johnson. And then Maxine. We've got her coming up today. Now, the Democrats they have members of Congress out in the streets protesting and yelling like morons into microphones that threatening the American people with violence. These are elected Democrats in the Senate and the House of Representatives. Some of them too dumb to drive a car on their own, like Maxine Waters, and there are a lot more of them. Steve, calling from San Antonio a moment ago, was talking about Hank Johnson, too. Was Hank Johnson out there? He should be out there. He should be at every Democrat gathering, don't you think? We've got a bunch of sound bites, audio, that actualities, things like that, radio stuff that we want to get to share with you. Before I get to that and listen to these members of Congress who really shouldn't be allowed to wander loose in any American city because they're a threat to themselves and to others, of course. But before we go there, let's go back to the phones, Michael. Let's go to Stephen, calling from Silver Spring, Maryland. But Stephen has called into the show before from Jerusalem, which is now the capital of Israel, thanks to Donald Trump, and the Democrats are against that because they're anti-Israel and they're anti-American and they're anti-capitalist and they're anti-American flag and they're they're not on our side. They're the left. They're for Iran. And I got a President Trump yesterday talking about Iran assassinating him because, they sent somebody here to the United States recently to assassinate him. But let's go to the telephones. Let's go to Stephen calling from Silver Spring. Stephen, you're on the Chris Plant Show.
Good morning, Chris. Actually, I should say Boker Tov. That's good morning in Hebrew. It's a wonderful day. It's so nice to be in America and have a president that's actually doing something and not in a closet. It's nice to see Trump out and engaging. But on the Israel thing, on the Gaza thing, I don't know if it's going to be Gaza USA or USA Gaza. But, everybody's around the world, including the other nations that are on the list to absorb some of the population in Gaza are responding in a negative way and don't want it. But, I think it's all, just for public opinion. But nobody's really asking the Palestinians that live in Gaza, would you like to go back to your home where there's no plumbing, where there's no sewage, where there's no electricity, or would you like to go and build a new life for you and your children somewhere else? Another thing is that they're not talking about is, okay, let's nobody's really put forth a viable solution of how to rebuild Gaza. But let's say you had a developer and you had, a pool of money that wanted to go and build a resort or build a convention center or a stadium. Well, as soon as you dig for the foundation and you want to put the pool on the ground floor, it's going to fall and collapse into a tunnel that you didn't know was under there. It can't be done. You cannot rebuild Gaza until you finish demolishing it and finding out what's there. When you go in and build a new building, you got to check the ground, you got to check the footers. It's going to hold. It's going to be stable. It's not doable. And you have a president now that's really speaking common sense. Here's one other thing. Before the war, many years ago, we used to have a joke. If you would offer a job to anyone from 18 to 25 to come and be a waiter in a restaurant in Israel, the people that were living in Gaza, you would have no more 18 and 25-year-olds in Gaza. The people all, it's human nature to want a peaceful, successful life. It's human nature. Mm-hmm. And what you're seeing, the people that are against it are either being brainwashed, they're brainwashed themselves, they're doing it under threat, or they're doing it for public opinion like the Arab nations. The Arab nations know this is a solution. And with the United States behind it, and finally speaking the truth, I said this at the beginning of the war when I was on a TikTok channel with a bunch of Harvard airheads who like to get off on each other by, whatever.
Right.
And I said the same thing. Well, why don't we just empty it out, rebuild it, and then they come back? No, that's genocide, this and that. Listen, I don't have a college education, but I'm glad I don't have a college education because
you'd be wrong a lot more often. Well, listen, you were living in Jerusalem, right?
Yes, I live in Jerusalem. I'm here for a couple of months.
Okay, and you've called in from Jerusalem in the past, just for people listening at home and following along. Now, a few minutes ago, I said, well, I think President Trump, and let me just share with you a couple of the headlines from our corrupt news media pals. The New York Times today, Trump's Gaza plan is unworkable, analysts say, all right? And they got analysts who say Trump's plan is unworkable. We haven't heard Trump's plan. We don't know what Trump's plan is. We don't know what is involved, and the New York Times has already declared it to be unworkable, and they attribute this unworkability to analysts that the New York Times selected to talk to. The rest of the headline, does he really mean it? Now, the Reuters news agency, Trump's Gaza plan for, quote, Riviera of the Middle East, end quote, triggers international condemnation. So it's already being condemned. That's the Reuters news agency, a global news agency, 60 minutes ago. So there's global condemnation, international condemnation. The New York Times says it's unworkable. I don't think that the news media is behind anything for the people of Gaza, for the so-called Palestinian people. Trump says he will take over Gaza and Palestinians should leave. That's one of the headlines here. Now, from what I can tell, and again, we don't have the meat on the bone here, not, bring meat on the bone into it, but deranged and problematic bipartisan group of lawmakers bash This is NBC Fake News. Trump's Gaza proposal. It's deranged and problematic. Now, I'd say that the Democrat Party is deranged and problematic and anti-civilizational, but that's just because I've been paying attention. Now,
Where do they get their education from? Where do these analysts get their education
Harvard.
from?
Everybody goes to Harvard.
Riviera,
yeah.
If you want to build a Riviera, if you want to build a Trump hotel, you got to build a foundation, and you have to clear the construction site. Mm-hmm. You can't build anything with 2 million people on it. It's impossible. It doesn't work.
Yeah.
I mean, these people are just so stupid. I'm sorry to speak like this. I don't understand how they could say that. Oh, let them stay there and let's rebuild it and let's make a Palestinian state and rebuild it. Well, how?
I've also been saying, Stephen, that the status quo ante, the pre-October 7th circumstance with Israel and Gaza was, in effect, a two-state solution, was it not?
Yeah, it was a democratic state and a terrorist state.
Right. And they had an election because the Israelis, first of all, President Trump, I know he's talking about building a desalination plant to desalinate the water out of the Mediterranean Sea. Now, where does the Gaza currently get their fresh water, their desalinated water?
I have no idea.
From Israel.
No idea.
Israel gives it to them. Where do they get their electricity?
The drinking water. Yeah, I don't know if they desalinate it, but yeah, they're getting water. They're getting water. They're getting food. We're supplying them. We're supporting them. Your tax dollars, U.S. aid, and all of that, and UNRWA, and all of that. Let me tell you something. I think we're going to have a surplus budget by when we're all finished in the United States. But that's a whole other story. We'll do that on another time. The plan is a workable plan. It's the only plan that can work. We don't have the details, but if you're going to rebuild anything there, it needs to be empty out. It's not safe. It's not safe. Hello, Harvard analysts, go talk to a contractor. Go talk to a builder. We're just going to build this 7-story building, but we don't know what's under there. We know that there's maybe 30 feet of rock, but underneath that, there's 30 feet of tunnel.
Right.
It's not workable.
Mines, munitions, rockets, ammunition, hostages, skeletons of hostages with long beards and cuffs shackled to the stone walls underground because the troglodytes have stolen them and they've been brutalizing them, and I won't get into all the details. But it's a horror show, and you're right. And why? And let me add one last question, Stephen. Why don't the Arab nations want the 2 million people from the Gaza Strip? Why don't the Egyptians, the Saudis, and the Jordanians want them?
Okay, so this is a two-part answer. Mm-hmm. One is they're afraid of the popularity of revolution against their own government. They're afraid of the people in Jordan, in Egypt that are going to rise up. But that's not going to happen because I'm going to tell you the truth. They really don't care. Okay, they might care of them coming in. The other thing and the real thing is they're afraid that Hamas and Muslim Brotherhood, somebody's going to set up shop in their own country.
Right.
Okay. Let me tell you something else. Let's go back a little biblical thing.
Because they're afraid that the Palestinians will come in and kill and murder and kidnap people and blow things up.
Absolutely, and just set up their terror shop in there.
Right.
The land of Israel is a claim that the Jews have from the biblical source. Mm-hmm. But when the land was divided up into tribes, okay, in the 12 tribes, the land was divided up. Gaza was not part of that. Gaza was a place where the bad people stayed. If you go back at the biblical history, it was never really a part of Israel. It was an outcast, and to this day. So I think leveling it, leaving it a no man's land for a few years, 10, 20, 30 years, might be the best interest in the world.
Maybe 40.
Congratulations to Donald Trump.
Yeah.
Well, eternity, okay?
That would be biblical.
Much better word.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's it. I hope and pray that this gets implemented, because if it does, let me tell you something. If it does, and they take Hamas out of the equation, these people will want to go somewhere else. They don't want to stay there. I don't. They may have been brainwashed and do, but deep down inside, it's humanity. It's a human. It's human nature to want a better life, to want it better for your kids.
That's right. That's why America exists, and why Israel should be admired, and the left is the most dangerous group of people in the world. Not the Islamists, not Hamas, not even Iran. It's the left in the West.
Yeah, but we're overtaking them. We are over. They are finished on the left. They're done. Okay.
I hope you're right.
All you guys on the left, you better wake up because there's strong coffee out there in the White House now.
Yeah, well, we got to hang in there. Stephen, thank you for the call. Welcome back to the United States for your couple of months staying here, and I'm glad you keep in touch, and I appreciate it. Stephen, thank you very much. Lena, let me get to President Trump, because while the media, meaning the Democrat Party, is attacking him everywhere, CNN, Trump says he will take over Gaza and Palestinians should leave. That's the Democrat headline at CNN, which is not a news organization at all, not even close. U.S. allies reject Trump proposal to take over Gaza, displace Palestinians. Well, and as Stephen's saying, you can't very well rebuild it while they're living there over their tunnel network with skeletons of hostages below them like a bad cartoon. But let's go to set the filthy, corrupt, left-wing terrorist news media aside. Let's go to what President Trump actually said yesterday at the White House and really got the ball rolling here.
I also strongly believe that the Gaza Strip, which has been a symbol of death and destruction for so many decades and so bad for the people anywhere near it, and especially those who live there, and frankly, who's been really very unlucky. It's been very unlucky. It's been an unlucky place for a long time. Being in its presence just has not been good, and it should not go through a process of rebuilding and occupation by the same people that have really stood there and fought for it and lived there and died there and lived a miserable existence there.
Yeah, well, it's not exactly a beachfront paradise. That's I've been talking about this for years, haven't I? 25 miles of beachfront property, and what do they do with it? Well, they put landmines there so nobody can walk on it without getting their legs blown off, because it's not easy being a troglodyte. But who better than they? Donald Trump.
Instead, we should go to other countries of interest with humanitarian hearts, and there are many of them that want to do this, and build various domains that will ultimately be occupied by the 1.8 million Palestinians living in Gaza, ending the death and destruction and, frankly, bad luck. This can be paid for by neighboring countries of great wealth. It could be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7, 8, 12. It could be numerous sites, or it could be one large site. But the people will be able to live in comfort and peace.
Thinking about the world from the perspective of a New York City developer, a global developer who, again, I've stayed in Trump buildings around the world outside of the United States. The guy's a builder. He builds stuff. And, you think Hamas is tough? He had to deal with the unions in New York. Here's President Trump yesterday.
The only reason the Palestinians want to go back to Gaza is they have no alternative. It's right now a demolition site. This is just a demolition site. Virtually every building is down. They're living under fallen concrete that's very dangerous and very precarious. They instead can occupy all of a beautiful area with homes and safety, and they can live out their lives in peace and harmony instead of having to go back and do it again.
Peace and harmony. Don't go back and do it again. And honestly, who would want to live in that beep hole of a beep hole that they themselves turned into a beep hole when Israel owns the beach a mile up and it is a beachfront paradise? What's the difference, you should ask yourself if you're interested? President Trump.
The U.S. will take over the Gaza Strip, and we will do a job with it, too. We'll own it and be responsible for dismantling all of the dangerous unexploded bombs and other weapons on the site, level the site and get rid of the destroyed buildings, level it out, create an economic development that will supply unlimited numbers of jobs and housing for the people of the area. Do a real job, do something different. Just can't go back. If you go back, it's going to end up the same way it has for 100 years.
We'll own it, President Trump said, and that's got a lot of people scratching heads, and, including me, quite honestly. I'm sorry, we want to own Gaza? Didn't Joe Biden try to put a little pier in there, and that was a complete disaster, a calamity? And, of course, it was the Biden administration. They completely screwed it up and botched it, and people got killed because they wanted to deliver aid to terrorists. Because the Democrat Party in the United States is the party of the KKK and the SDS and the Weather Underground and the Symbionese Liberation Army, the party of killing and kidnapping and robbing banks and armored cars and revolution and bringing violence to the streets. Where do you hear these Democrat members of Congress yesterday in Washington, D.C.? I do suspect that President Trump, once again, he kind of let the balloon go up, I think, without talking to anybody about it. And he will expose the Arab world and the so-called international community for what they are, which is a gang of dangerous frauds that back terrorists and don't back civilization. President Trump's declaration yesterday will doubtless reveal them to be what some of us have always known them to be. And then we'll have to say, well, we got to wash our hands of it for now and for the next 1,000 years. All right, I haven't even scratched the surface on the news of the day. Wait till you hear the Democrats in the streets of Washington threatening violence, and the elected Democrat, not just street rabble. Of course, they're members of the Senator street rabble at this point. Shutting things down caused me a traffic jam yesterday downtown. Leftists. Let's grab another phone call, Michael. Let's go to Philip, formerly of Arlington. Philip, you were on the Chris Plant Show.
Chris, good morning. And today I'm coming out of the closet because I no longer fear the Biden FBI. I am now Philip of Kentucky.
Philip of Kentucky. Yay.
Oh, Chris, very quickly, if Trump really wanted to do this, he could do a very mini Marshall Plan to rebuild Gaza. And basically that is the U.S. government buys American goods and services, trucks, roadway materials, housing materials. Then they give that money. We give the goods to the Gaza government, and then they rebuild. So we don't use our money to pay them. We pay American companies for our stuff and our infrastructure, and that's the way we can rebuild Gaza.
Of course, you, I think, know perfectly well that when you give it to the leadership in Gaza, Hamas, a terrorist group, they'll steal most of it and destroy the rest, right?
Admittedly, yes, and that's why you'll need a new government, of course, a government that's of the people, respected by the people, and not just a bunch of terrorist thugs.
So you got to clear them out first, which is what President Trump is talking about. We should demand that Europe and the Middle East pay for it, and they never will.